Hello everyone, this is Brian with the Collector Report, and this is my review of the Rise of Skywalker. I saw the movie on opening night, but it just took me a little bit to make this video because I was busy with other things. Long story short, I liked the movie. I thought it was solid. I think most people are going to like it. Rotten Tomatoes right now, the movie is showing at 86% audience approval rating, so that kind of bears out my theory. Most people are going to like it. Because I think it's a satisfying conclusion, to this Disney trilogy of Star Wars movies, and also just to the last 40 years and the 8 other movies. Like it comes to a pretty satisfying conclusion, I think. There's always going to be people that aren't happy with it because of that, because they've grown up with it, because they played the games and read the books, and then know like what the story could have been, and it could have been, I think, a lot better if Disney had played their cards right, which I don't think they did. And so, there's going to be a chunk of people that aren't happy, and I think for good reason. But I think, considering what J.J. Abrams inherited story-wise from The Last Jedi, that he did an awesome job bringing everything to a conclusion. So, so to recap what happened in The Last Jedi, right? Luke is dead. Captain Phasma, cool stormtrooper we never really learned about, she's dead. Supreme Leader Snoke, who never really learned how he became, the top Sith Lord, he's dead. The rebellion, a whole bunch of them have died. They've lost a lot of their ships. So it's just kind of like all these storylines that were developed in The Force Awakens were just kind of killed or destroyed in Last Jedi. So that's what J.J. Abrams inherited and had to come up with some coherent, story that tied back to these other two movies in the trilogy, but also, in a way, tie back to the history of what's happened in the last 40 years, and movie-wise and story-wise and stuff. So we get that scrolling text. We learn that this is spoiler-free, by the way. It said Untitled. I don't think I've said that in the video, but we learn in the scrolling text that some stuff happened off-screen in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, and then it cuts to a scene of Kylo Ren. And this movie really just focuses on the story of Rey and Kylo Ren, right? Rey is still trying to figure out who she is. She's developing her abilities with the Force, and Kylo Ren is now the supreme leader of the First Order, and they still have their connection, so he's still trying to work on her to get Rey to join him. Rebellion's trying to fight against the First Order, and the story just kind of goes from there. A lot of the side characters aren't developed at all. Like, they're there, they have lines. Finn and Poe, finally come together with Rey and the Rebellion. Everyone's on one spot now. But all these side characters, like, there wasn't a lot of time for the character development, I think, because so much story and so much had to happen in this movie. So it mainly just focuses on Rey and Kylo Ren, which I kind of liked. Like, there's just this really cool symmetry between these two characters, their backstory, and their personal choices that they ended up making. And it's also reflected in, like, the color of the clothes they wear and stuff. And there was just this cool symmetry that really appealed to my sense of storytelling that I really enjoyed, that I thought was awesome. I feel like it was a shame that Finn wasn't developed more in this whole trilogy of movies, because to me he was the most interesting character, the new character that was introduced, but not a ton was done with them. And I feel like he could have been this cool character, and then maybe they could have done some other side TV show or movies about him. And I also think what's his name, John Boyega, hopefully I'm saying his name right. Like, I don't know if he just grew as an actor or became more comfortable in the role that he was playing, but he was just, the parts of the movie he were in, he just did a really, really good job portraying Finn. Like, he just seemed to have developed a lot more as an actor and as a character, and that really shone through. So props to him in his role. Like, he did a great job, even though Finn wasn't utilized as much as he could have been. A couple new characters were introduced, which was an interesting choice just because so much had happened, but they're still introducing new characters in this last movie. But, what are you going to do? The effects were amazing. There's some super cool shots, just that watching it on the big screen, just where, you're not going to have the same effect watching it on a TV, unless you have a 90-inch TV. Maybe then it'll be the same. But just watching on the big screen was they were a spectacle for sure, which is what you would expect, right? With the deep pockets of Disney and the effects department people they can hire. Music, as always, was really cool. There was a lot of like Sith kind of dark mood music for some of the shots, and I just really liked it. Like, and the background, like environmental effects, played into the music and the score that was going on at the same time. So that was a really cool effect that I enjoyed. Overall, the story just came to this cool conclusion. I thought it was interesting that, I don't know if it was Kathleen Kennedy or who at Disney said this, maybe been the CEO, but just that they were it's gonna take them like 3 or 4 years before they come out with another movie. And I think that's because this last trilogy, like, Disney dropped the ball big time. Like, my whole takeaway from this trilogy is just that Disney dropped the ball. They paid $4 billion for this franchise, and then they start making The Force Awakens, and I don't think, they should have had a script for all 3 movies so they knew what the complete story was going to be, right? I think because of the timing of filming, editing, and then releasing the movie, they decided to have different directors for the first, second. I don't know if J.J. Abrams was originally doing the 3rd movie. I think it was another 3rd director. So they had 3 different directors for each of these movies because they had to start filming the next movie before the previous movie had been released in theaters, just to make this release schedule that they had come up with and committed to, or maybe internally wanted to get the movies out on, to make some of that $4 billion back. But they dropped the ball hard because they needed, do copy the Lord of the Rings, right? Like, have the complete script for all 3 movies written, know what the story's going to be. If you want to stick to that schedule, have 3 different directors, give them the complete scripts for all 3 movies so they know what the story's going to be, and they say, these are the points you need to hit. Sure, you can have like some creative stuff to make the movie your own, add your own flair on it maybe, but this, to make it continuous, to tie everything together, this is where you need to get to in this movie. These are the storylines you need to hit of your portion, but they didn't do that. So you end up with this mess where The Force Awakens introduces all these characters, introduces all these storylines. The Last Jedi, it seemed like, this is hard to, this is just my assumptions and what I think happened, because it's hard to know for sure without knowing, maybe what the original plan was with all these movies. But it seemed like Force Awakens introduced all this stuff. Last Jedi killed everybody, killed everything off, shut down all the storylines, and then J.J. Abrams had to come up with a way to tie everything back together again in a way that still made some sort of sense. And to do that, he just had to focus on Rey and Kylo Ren. Everyone else, is just very minor. They're not really developed at all, which is a shame. And then just to get to the story, to the end point of where it needed to be to close everything out. So, I think Disney just dropped the ball hardcore on this. At this point, a lot of fans, a lot of people that, Luke Skywalker was kind of their childhood hero, have kind of just walked away from Star Wars, and that's, I think, this last movie is why it's, it's made a ton of money, but I think it's the lowest grossing movie on its opening weekend of this new Disney trilogy, because people were just so upset with how, there's a lot of nostalgia tied up in these movies, and they honestly, none of them have been the best. Like Force Awakens, it was okay, it was solid. It was just basically a retelling, right, of like A New Hope, or a new Death Star to blow up, like just with new characters, Poe's another Han Solo. Like each movie has had its issues. Last Jedi, in my opinion, was by far the worst movie of the entire franchise, and man, it's just disappointing to see such an iconic, intellectual property just kind of bomb like this, especially with Disney and what they've done with all the Marvel movies and tying everything together. Like, they just dropped the ball so hard. So hopefully Kathleen Kennedy is gotten rid of and they get someone else in charge. The reason I say that, Kathleen Kennedy, in a quote, said that when they were developing these 3 movies, that there weren't books and comics that they could go off of and draw stuff from, and they were just kind of spitballing in a room, right? And I think, I don't know what her knowledge is, if she just wasn't thinking about it, but that also kind of goes and shows what her knowledge of Star Wars is, because there are so many books, so many comics that they could have drawn from. And Disney declared that all of that stuff, the expanded universe, is no longer canon. But even though they said that, that doesn't mean you can't draw story elements from those books, from those comics, and use it in these movies. Like, they may no longer be canon, but it's still like a pretty wide pool of ideas and stories and characters that you could draw from to make them your own. And they just dropped the ball on that too. So hopefully someone else is put in charge. The Mandalorian, is on Disney Plus right now. I've watched the whole series. There's some weaker episodes, but overall I think it was pretty good, and I think it's moving in the right direction to renew interest in the Star Wars universe. So now that this is done, I'm really interested to see where they go from here. The next video will have kind of some of my thoughts on some stuff, some directions they might possibly go, but it's going to be really interesting to see what they put out in TV in the next couple of years, and then what the next movie or a couple movies are going to be after people's reaction to this trilogy, and to how well the Rise of Skywalker kind of put a salve on people's wounds from The Last Jedi. So we'll see what happens. That's my take on things. You like science fiction, fantasy, and books and movies and comics, subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of great content coming out, and I'll see you next time.